David Lorimer. I'm the Program Director and Global Ambassador for the Scientific and Medical Network, and I'm here with our honorary member, Anne Baring, in the series of interviews that I'm doing with honorary members to mark the Jubilee of the Scientific and Medical Network. So Anne, welcome. Lovely to see you in your...
Lovely to be here and to see your face again. Very great pleasure.
So I'm speaking from Scotland, from our family home on this particular occasion. You can see the World Atlas behind me.
Yes, I can indeed.
So I'm going to begin with my first question to ask who and or what inspired you in your line of work?
Well, I've put down 5 influences. First of all, the channeled messages that I received through my mother from the age of 13, for her messages, that is, but I had a few for myself, which said I was to prepare for a future mission of some kind, something to do with helping sister souls. I received that when I was about 15, so that was the first influence. The second was St. Francis, because the messages, some of them came to me through from St. Francis, and obviously had a great influence on my life. I went to Assisi with my mother when I was 15 and visited all the precious memories that are there. And I went there also when Venus was crossing the sun with Veronica Goodchild, and we stood in that marvelous forest just near the little tiny hermitage and listened to the birds, who were unbelievable. So that was the second influence. The third one was Sri Ramana, when I went to India when I was 25 and spent some time in his ashram and learnt to ask the question, who am I? Which has taken a long time to answer, but I feel I have answered it now. And the fourth one was Jung, becoming a Jungian analyst and studying his work and really being guided by him as a mentor, going through 22 years of analysis with 2 different analysts. So Jung was a good part of my life. And finally, I would say that the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, Mary Magdalene's Gospel, has had a huge influence on me and taken me into new lines of research, tied me up with someone called Anine Vandermeer, who has written extensively about the feminine principle, the divine feminine, and a mammoth work on Mary Magdalene that's just been published. So those 5 influences have definitely shaped and directed my life.
That's very rich, multiple sources, as it were. And as you say, the most recent is the Gospel of the Beloved Companion, which has had a huge effect on both of our lives. And then what do you think of, Anne, as your most significant contribution? Because you have written some very significant books. So I'd be very interested to hear your response to that particular question.
I think my most significant contribution is to the feminine principle, to rescuing the divine feminine, the feminine aspect of God, if you like, which has been completely neglected for nearly 4,000 years. And really to bring it back, first of all, through the myth of the goddess, which was the book I wrote with Jules Cashford, which was an enormous work, which took us 10 years, studying the lost feminine principle over 25,000 years, really. And secondly, the work that came from a dream I had of a cosmic woman, and that led me to write The Dream of the Cosmos and my later books with Andrew Harvey, The Divine Feminine and The Mystic Vision. So I would say that I've made quite a considerable contribution in that respect to rescuing the divine feminine. And I'm still going on with that work now. I haven't finished.
Absolutely.
So I shall
That's
go
really
on.
your mission, isn't it?
That's my mission. And I had no idea of my mission until I had that dream when I was in my 40s. But I certainly had no idea in my 20s and 30s what that mission might be, even though the messages warned me that I should prepare for one. I should educate myself, get a university degree, which I did. I should travel, and which I did, 2 journeys when I was 25, all over the Far East. And that brought me in touch with Hinduism and Buddhism, which have had also a great influence on my life. And the whole of the Far East opened up, and also China, of great importance to me, the Taoist philosophy of China, So all these influences have been like a sort of potpourri working away in my life. And I've extracted elements from them at certain different times. And now, I'm writing a book on the Holy Spirit, bringing all this knowledge together in a not too long a book, I hope. But it will include the Cathars, and it would include fairy tales like Cinderella, where the godmother is the disguised presence of the divine feminine in that story, rescuing the human soul from its plight in the ashes of a fire, so to speak, sitting by the fire, not able to go to the ball, and the fairy godmother rescues her. So that's one whole chapter. Another chapter is Esclamant de Foi and the influence of the Cathars, and the general chapters on the history, which will be a sort of compact version of what Anine has done.
Very good. Well, I'm looking forward to that. And then maybe you could just share the essence of that dream of the goddess and yourself, because I think that's a very important.
Well, that was a crucial dream. It changed my life. I think I was in my 40s then, in the middle of a Jungian analysis with Hella Adler. And the dream was that I came round the edge of a huge dolmen and into another world. And it was bright moonlight, full moon, and the wheat was green. It was a great field of wheat, green wheat. And I had bare feet, and I skimmed over the top of the wheat. I didn't touch the ground. I skimmed the top of the wheat for many miles across this extraordinary landscape, this moonlit landscape, until I came to a dip, a valley. And I wondered whether I should stop there and not go on. And I saw that at either side of the valley, there was a tall man standing, holding a gigantic net, which stretched across the whole floor of the valley. And so I then found myself entangled in the net, looking up at the sky. I was lying on my back, looking up, and I saw or had this vision of an enormous cosmic woman who stretched really from the earth right through to the top of the heavens. She was naked. She was not old or young. She had, I think, long hair, and she had an enormous wheel in her abdomen, something like the labyrinth in Chartres. And she told me to look down at my body, and I saw that I also had the similar wheel, but it was over on the left. And she didn't speak to me, but she indicated that I was to center my wheel and get more conscious, in other words, become more conscious. So in my 40s, I had that. And the next phase of my life until now has been devoted to the divine feminine. And I knew through the research I did after that dream that she was an image of the Shekinah of Kabbalah. And as the Shekinah, she was the feminine aspect of God. So I was led to Kabbalah, where I studied Kabbalah for some years with Warren Kenton, and was allowed to teach Kabbalah, which is actually incorporated into all my teaching without my specifically saying what I'm doing. And so that dream really triggered this second phase of my life and my true mission.
Extraordinary. And I think there's a sort of microcosm, macrocosm image as well, isn't it? And the centering is such a beautiful metaphor. And I just wanted to mention one other thing, which I think has been very important in your life, and that's beauty.
Tremendously important. That came from my mother, because I was brought up in a beautiful environment. Both my grandmother and my mother had beautiful houses, beautiful rooms, beautiful objects. And I was brought up in that. So I kind of absorbed it as a child from sort of age of 3 onwards. And I was taken to Italy by my mother twice when I was 15 and 16, and that I encountered there the marvelous painting of the Renaissance artists, particularly Fra Angelico at Cortona, a fantastic painting there of the Annunciation, and then also a painting by Piero della Francesca of the Resurrection. That made a huge impact on me, aged 15 or 16. Because it was then in a small room and you came close up to it. You weren't in a distant from it. And it was just overwhelming. And so that became an inspiration. First of all, the beauty of Fra Angelico's paintings, and then the numinous quality of that Resurrection of Piero della Francesca. So I studied, at Oxford, I actually studied the Renaissance, and particularly the painters, as well as medieval history. that's what I got my degree in. So beauty was there all the time. And of course, I traveled a lot in the Far East, and I encountered beauty everywhere in the paintings and sculptures of the great artists of India and Burma and China. So I had a great reservoir of knowledge about beauty and painting before I actually began my writing and my work. Although I did write the one work, which was my first book published in 1961, which actually I think may be my finest work, but it's very difficult to find on the internet now. And it was published under the name Anne Gage.
Yes, that's so interesting, because it's a further source of inspiration. I'm going to go on now to how you see the evolution of consciousness studies and the relationship between science and spirituality over the next period.
Well, I think we have to look at the next 10 years. And I watched an extremely interesting interview between Jim Garrison and Stephen Dinan, who is head of the Shift Network, and how Steve Dinan saw the next 10 years. He said he's going to try and reach 100 million people. He's reached, I think, 50 million so far, and he wants to expand it. And he wants to really focus on consciousness and the evolution of consciousness and the development of it, and to move out of this scientific materialism. I don't think you mentioned that, but that's what I would be concentrating on if I had the life energy to do it. Because we're definitely, I think, with the admittance of the UFOs in the US Congress, science can no longer say, or materialist science can no longer say, that we're alone in the universe or that we are only, our consciousness is functioning in the universe. All that will go out as old flat earth beliefs sort of thing. I see that going. They can't sustain their belief system in the face of what's being discovered, the fact that UFOs are present around in our skies and probably have been for thousands of years. So that's a huge breakthrough, which Jim Garrison is now moving to Washington to work with somebody on this, to take this forward. And I think that's very interesting. And a lot will come from him about this. And I see the world going through a very difficult 10-year period, which I hope we will come through, that we don't destroy ourselves through nuclear weapons. We have to tackle the whole thing of war and the addiction to war. And I'm working on that at the moment in various talks that I've been given, and in a meeting on the 20th about putting an end to war, with many groups coming together to discuss this or to put forward what they're doing. So there's a lot going on, but we have to leave the old pattern, the old addiction, if we're to survive. And in order to do that, we have to know who we are. And we've never known who we are, where we've come from, or where we're going. And this has been a huge lacuna, both in science and religion. And I think this is going to be filled. It's certainly going to be filled by me, saying that we are immortal creatures who are part of the divinity of the whole universe. There's no separation between spirit and matter. It's one whole, and we are part of that whole. And the whole is divine and eternal, if you like, or as eternal as we can comprehend. So we have to have a whole new understanding of what we are, who we are, and why we're here on the planet, which is very exciting, because if this gets through to people, they will see themselves in a different way, and they won't need to see everybody as an enemy, preparing for the next war, preparing where is the next enemy going to be? Is it China? Is it this or is it that? Is it outer space? Is it UFOs? You know, we're going to have to drop all that and move into a new kind of consciousness of oneness and eternity.
I couldn't agree more. And as you say, there are very practical implications to this sort of metaphysically driven view or metaphysical revolution, which is absolutely essential, I think, as you say, in order to emerge from the challenges that our scientific materialist and economic view has created. So we've created our own challenge, and now we need to rise to it.
Yeah, we've created our own trap, or our own Platonic cave, if you like. We're stuck in the cave we've created over these 4,000 years, and we have no idea what we've been missing. And I think channeled messages is another thing that's opening up. People are beginning to speak about, I don't know whether it's not really the transcendent, because we're part of it. So it's difficult to give it a name, but anyway, other world consciousness is coming through. Mediumship is being developed. That's one of the things that Stephen Diamond is concentrating on. There are extraordinary mediums out there who are training other people on how to be mediums. So that's a new departure, a new form of learning that we can embark on. And that will open up, the science that resists that will be ridiculed, which is about time that it is ridiculed, and the firewall that's existed between the knowledge we have and the knowledge that's available, if we opened our minds to it, that firewall will come down.
No, very much. And I think there's also a revival of Gnosticism and Gnosis, and the questions that you were just, or the themes you were just exploring about, who are we, where have we come from, where are we going? This is exactly what Gnosis was all about. And that was, of course, suppressed by the authorities, but it's re-emerging very strongly, I think. And obviously Jung would be another part of this. Yes,
he would indeed. I think there is one thing we have to be very careful of, and that is how we can be hypnotized into obedience to authority, which we've seen under COVID. It's extremely dangerous. People don't know they are hypnotized, and so they go with the belief system that's presented to them by government or by science or by religion, instead of really working out what is the truth. So we have to really be aware that there are dangers in the future of totalitarianism and control by governments and by international bodies. And we have to wake up to that danger and not go along with it in a state of semi-hypnosis, almost psychosis, because that's what really we were in the last 3 years. And we were told things that were not true, and we were told to believe things that were completely false, and anything that was different from the official line was censored. And I see that in America, a case has just been won against Biden and the American government. It's just in the news today on children health defense. They won the case that Biden went against the First Amendment, is it?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so that's important. That's a huge step forward there.
Well, exactly. And hopefully the independent judiciary can actually come up with, stand up for what's right. And
that
true.
It's still independent. That's a huge bonus.
It is. And then moving on to the network. I mean, you've been a member for a long time. How do you see the significance of the network?
I think the network is brilliant, thanks to you mainly, on all the speakers that you invite to come. But I think somehow it needs to broaden its understanding, or broaden its base, and take on the fact of censorship and include the things that have been censored, and just sort of open its mind to this next 10-year phase of understanding much more about who we are and why we're here. But you're very much in touch with all the people who are doing this, so I don't think that the network won't fall behind if you're in charge of it. And I see you as in charge of it. I see you as one with the network, so to speak.
Well, one of the very interesting things, going back to our founders, was George Blaker saying that we should promote man's spiritual essence as compatible with enlightened scientific thinking. And so I'm arguing at the moment that we should be more explicit in promoting man's spiritual essence, or the human spiritual essence, but that's a matter for debate.
Well, I would agree. I think you can't debate for very long. You have to take a decision on this, and it's very important that the network move forward in the direction you've just said. Otherwise, I wouldn't want to belong to it anymore, because it wouldn't interest me.
No, indeed. And let's come to the last question, which is the most interesting and maybe the most difficult, about what have been your most important lessons from life, both personally and professionally?
Personally, it's to follow the heart, to first of all open the heart, to move out of the mind into the heart and know that you have a heart, and to work really from that different kind of consciousness, following what you're feeling it draws you to, like it drew me to the Renaissance painting in Italy. Then it drew me to work at university. Incidentally, when I was at university, I translated the Liber de Duobus Principis,
Really?
and I wrote an essay on it, which horrified my tutor. But you see, that's where you begin, where your feeling draws you to. And then the journeys to the East, following that thread, following what grew out of it. And it's really the excitement of being alive and responding to that sense of life flowing through you and wanting to search out the direction of your life, the path that you're meant to take. But you have to ask, what path am I meant to take in order to be shown it? Because if you don't ask, you don't get shown quite often. Sometimes you're lucky and sometimes you just fall into your true path. But with me, I had to search quite a lot, and I had to have a lot of analysis to work through the inhibitions, the fears, the patterns of that I accrued to me through being a woman, because woman is still not accorded the acknowledgement that she needs, and she's still treated as a sexual object in many, many domains. And this is outrageously insulting to women, and it needs to be addressed. I see that in the papers today that women surgeons are complaining of the male surgeons attacking them, even raping them just before operations. So this is unbelievable that it still exists, and there's a whole survey been done. So this has to be addressed. So I think that my important lesson is to follow the path of what the heart is leading one to trust it, to try and overcome innumerable fears that we've been programmed to have, because fear is the biggest impediment to finding your path. And really to listen to the guidance. With me, it was guidance coming from St. Francis and others in the other dimensions, to trust that, to know that it exists, to know that we're not alone on the planet, to know that a lot of what we're told is lies and rubbish. We have to find the truth in the midst of all this shit.
We do indeed.
Sorry about that. You could cut that.
No. I think we need this strong language. Absolutely. So, Anne, thank you so much for sharing your life wisdom with us and being on the interview series with.
It's very, very great pleasure, as always, to talk to you, David. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.